He's back. We've got Jeff Taylor back, our resident blasting expert from BlastOne. Last time, he spoke of the different media used in blasting, their pros and cons. We ended with the secret formula to CFM and room size. Well, I had some more questions about that. We also dig a little deeper into GMA's Garnet product line with BlastOne. And finally, how deciphering rest quality first and what it could mean for you before you send out that next resto quote. Now, to get things going, we start off with the bathroom joke and the proper use of Zoom backgrounds at the office. Never mind the noise in the background, that's just productivity as Ross finishes building his big 20-foot oven. Let's get ready to level up your powder coater game.
Do you want to put your screen back up because the bathroom sign is behind you?
Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, hang on. Let me get my virtual background.
Somebody walking around with toilet paper on there.
Was I?
There you go.
I didn't even see that this was on the podcast last time. It was.
What?
I didn't even see there was a video to it. I guess I didn't click on the right link.
Well,
I just heard it.
The MP3, but then if you go to the YouTube channel, it's on there.
Okay.
I can't, it might be up there actually as a video. I'm still learning podcasting.
Yeah.
Not sure I have it all together yet.
I didn't spend much time on it. Okay.
But happy that, okay. So, hey, guess what? We've got Jeff Taylor back again. I loved hearing what he had to say so much that we decided to come back sooner than later and talk about a lot of different things this time. We're going to get a little deeper we're going to review the secret formula just briefly and to clarify some things. And then we're going to get into the Garnet again and talk about some of the more benefits of Garnet. And then the last thing we're going to talk about today, and you definitely want to hang on to this, is we're going to talk about the grades of rust decay and what it means for you in terms of costing and estimating, because it seems like the different grades can translate into more work, right, in restoration and stuff. So back again, we have Jeff Taylor. I'm so happy he's on the show. Thanks for coming back, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
So let's get into the formula, the secret formula that you left us, because Ross and I had some questions about it. We have a 10 by 20 room. It's enclosed 100%. It's not outdoors. And we kind of figured out that we might be a little under the requirements for safety.
Okay.
So we plugged in the formula and there was some confusion about what the 80 versus the 100.
Sure.
And let me get that. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to, is that it? Yeah. I'm going to share my screen because this is the page that we referenced. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So this was what we referenced, this link in the episode. And if I listened to this, but I found this easier to read through. And obviously when they're calling for under ventilation requirements, they're calling for non-hazardous dust.
Okay.
That's like something like Garnet, right?
Yeah. So at BlastOne, we have a team. Our company. I'm going to touch on this really quickly, just because if anyone wants to inquire at BlastOne on Blast booth help, we have a division within BlastOne that looks after paint booths and blast booths and can drill into the engineering side, which this is really in detail on specifications, what they are and why they are. But for a quick reference, this is a great thing to look at. We even go as low as plugging in 60 to this formula if you're using a very low dusting abrasive like Garnet when it's properly tuned in and properly being used. You can get away with a slightly different formula, but a really good standard, which is highlighted here for horizontal air movement on non-hazardous, is taking this, for instance, an area length and width times 80, and that will give you the necessary air changes per minute of horizontal air movement. In a non-hazardous dusty environment, you want to have at least 80 feet of air per minute move.
But so what they're calling 100 feet per minute hazardous dust, that would be like your coal slag. That's what they're.
Well, no, hazardous dust would be like lead. If you're doing a lead abatement or any type of hazardous environment, hazardous environment if you're using something that is above your permissible exposure limits, right. Like if you had heavy beryllium, or you would want to speed up the amount of air moving through there. So
that makes sense. It's very simple, but then it can be still kind of ambiguous a little bit because we were kind of playing around with this formula. And so we came up with, we have a 10 by 20, right? Yep. So 10 times 20 times 80 is 16,000 CFM that we would need in a dust collector. And if we went with the 60, which, it kind of can float between 60 and 80, depending on what you're blasting, 10 by 20, 10 times 20 times 60 is more or less 12,000 CFM. So we want to find equipment that can push that kind of air through.
Yeah. So I always tend to say this is kind of a interesting topic because there's a lot of money involved in this type of equipment. So I always want to err on the side of grace in a sense that if you say, okay, worst case scenario, 100, you're going to upsize your dust collector. You're going to have a lot of air changes and a lot of air movement in that booth. It's going to be you open your bandwidth. You're like, look, I'm comfortable doing lead jobs. I'm comfortable doing anything in this blast room. But for the sake of budgetary numbers and there's a huge cost difference from a 24,000 CFM dust collector to a 12,000 CFM dust collector. So you got to look at that as well. So you can't always afford the biggest, the best, the baddest. But if you had 100 feet, if you went by the horizontal air movement using the 100, that's going to be worst case scenario. You'll always have enough air for that room. But if you can get away with going as low as 60 if you're in a environment where you have a very low dusting abrasive or you're working on a project that's low dusting. You could probably go down as low as 60 on your air movement and still have the necessary airflow.
Well, I think the thing with, and the podcast obviously is two powder coaters that are scaling their business and just getting into it, or maybe have been around for a while but need to invest in some more equipment but don't know what they need or how to get it, is, it's good to do these formulas because it helps you one plan for upgrading your equipment when the time comes or when the money comes. And secondly, I don't know this for sure, but I'm going to assume because we were underrated with our CFMs when we plugged in this formula, it kind of shocked us a little bit because we realized that we really we're sort of under. We're definitely under, and it concerned me because I think a lot of powder coaters may be under as well. And it's always something to address because, you're trying to start this business or scale this business and there's only so much money and you're just trying to you have to have all of these things. You have to have a strip tank. You have to have, you know, in order to have an effective operation, you need to have the blasting kind of sorted out. You need to have your gun is expensive. You know, there's a lot of expensive equipment for what we do. And it's not just a matter of just having it there or there or there, just like I got it. You know, it's also the quality, or making sure that nobody's getting sick on the job. Nobody wants that. And everybody stays healthy and safe too. So it's good that we're just kind of briefly touching on it. I think this is good enough. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Sounds good. Okay, so moving on, we're going to move on to, first I want to reference this blasting. This was the GMA blasting download that I recommended everybody get, just to have on hand as a sort of a reference guide. Of course, you know, full disclosure, we use the GMA Garnet, but I really like this. It's so simple, and the way they broke it down here, it's very easy to read. It's not cumbersome. And on this page 3, this is what we referenced that day, our previous podcast. This is pretty much what we were going off of. And it's a very helpful guide, and it covers pretty much everything. So if you get this guide and you listen along to the previous podcast, which was episode 14, the first time we had Jeff Taylor on, this is what we were referencing here and stuff. So I'll put a link in the, to get the guide, I'll put the link in this episode as well. And it's very simple and easy to understand. Now we're going to move on to that, kind of getting a little deeper into the Garnet abrasive blasting buying guide. So I'm going to let you run with this, Jeff, because this is your wheelhouse here. Okay,
sure. So when selecting an abrasive, you take a lot of things into consideration, and this is probably more industry related. You're not doing concrete in powder, in powder coating. So to stick to if you're doing aluminum or stainless steel or carbon steel, that will have a lot to do with what abrasive you select. If you're removing a coating, if you're looking at, and we're going to get into this in our next segment, which is your grade of rust, your class of blast, that will help you also guide you in how you want to select your abrasive. And then dusting requirement, the environment you're working in. So we are a big supporter of Garnet and GMA Garnet, and we find that to be an excellent abrasive for the industry, especially the powder coating industry, because it is a very effective high performance abrasive. It's a low dusting abrasive. It's environmentally friendly, so it's easy to dispose of, or even there are some programs through GMA where we can take it back if you're close enough to a plant and take it off of your hands for very little cost or no cost. So if you're following along to the previous chart, it highlighted all the advantages to Garnet, and then again here we highlight some of the advantages. You're usually going to see a much faster production rate, especially on mill scale and rust. There's really no faster abrasive when it comes to mill scale than Garnet, and you see a lot of that with carbon steel and in the powder coating industry. So you're going to get a much higher production out of GMA Garnet, as well as lower consumption, and that will drive down your overall cost per square foot to blast. So if you look at another thing that GMA has done and working with BlastOne is create blends. We know that coarse abrasive cuts real well and gives you anchor profile real well. It's very good for removing, let's say you have a very thick coating you're trying to get off. You want a very coarse abrasive. But coarse abrasives don't work as well on cleaning side. So when it comes to cleaning your steel, like mill scale and corrosion and pitting, you want a finer abrasive. That's going to give you more impacts per second. It's going to get into all the corrosion in the steel, into the pockets, and really clean it. So you're getting more abrasive impacting the surface per second. So a fine abrasive is great for cleaning. A coarse abrasive is great for cutting. What we've done is we've taken coarse and fine abrasive and we blended at specific ratios. That's when you get into your GMA new steel, your GMA GX1, GX2, and GX3 abrasives, and we can dig into how you would select those abrasives and how well they work in each, how you would select them.
You know, that's interesting. I didn't know that they had that. And what's the cost comparison with the blends versus just all garnet?
So they range. Each product ranges. Even that holds true with coarse and fine. You know, normally you'll find that your coarser abrasives are more expensive than your finer abrasives. So the same holds true when you look at the blends. The more coarse you have in the blend, the higher cost it is. So,
sorry, are you hearing any background noise?
Just a tad bit.
Sorry,
on my guys well,
sure. He's replacing the wheels on the rack right now to quieter ones. But
okay.
He's making noise doing it. So sorry, I didn't mean to disrupt, but that's what's happening if you hear it.
Yeah, it's not,
okay,
I can't really hear much of it on this end.
Well, that's cool. Okay, so, and then what's this speed blast? Is there something different here with this one versus the other one, the new steel?
So, yep. So if you scroll back up we'll start on new steel and then we'll go through. So looking at your new steel garnet, it's ideal for new steel and low profile. So most coatings have a specification that is, it tells you what the class and cleanliness of blast should be and what anchor profile you need. So that's another way you determine what abrasive to use, is what anchor profile is needed and what class of blast is needed. So the GMA new steel is exactly what it says it is. It's fantastic for new steel. It works very, very well on mill scale and corrosion and any new construction blasting with light rust removal and mill scale removal and preparation for powder coating and whip blasting. This is an ideal abrasive for that. You can crank your pressure up, tune your metering valves down, and just get so much production done using very little abrasive with the new steel. So this is fantastic on your newer construction jobs.
That's awesome. Okay. And then now down here, you have GX1 Speed Blast.
Yep. So this is a blend of abrasives. It's a blend of your finer abrasive with the coarser abrasive. This is a 30-60 blended with an 80. And this is ideal for general industrial maintenance blasting, light coating removal, where you are constantly changing what you are blasting from mill scale to coating removal, on-site maintenance, and pipeline. So this is a versatile abrasive. It's a little bit more aggressive than your 80 mesh. So it'll get light coating removal up to 10 to 12 mils, a little higher anchor profile. So if you need a little higher anchor profile than you would with the new steel is generally between a 1 to 2 anchor profile. This will give you between a 1.5 and 2.5 anchor profile.
So sorry about that. I took a phone call and had to get interrupted. But in the meantime, we kind of talked about some of the history of garnet, where it comes from. And Jeff, you want to just continue with that?
Sure, absolutely. GMA Garnet is an alluvial Australian garnet. There's in Australia, there's only a few really good garnet mine sources in the world, and GMA owns the majority of them. The original Australian alluvial garnets out of Australia and New Zealand, there's a mine in Australia. GMA owns it, and it is one of the best sources for garnet in the world. And then we also have a good mine in South Africa making and producing an alluvial garnet. And we also have a mine in Montana, which is producing a crushed garnet. So when you look at GMA, you got GMA United States, America, you got GMA Australia. And America, we offer the GX products, which is a blend of the GMA Australian garnet and the GMA alluvial garnet out of South Africa in those two mine sources. We blend it with the crushed rock out of Montana, and we created our GMAX products. So when you look at your GMA Tough Blast, your GMA Extreme Blast, and your GMA Premium Blast, that's your GX1, GX2, and GX3. That's where that you get that. And I could really geek out and talk about the difference between crushed and alluvial. We can get into that at a later time. But if we just want to keep on track with how you would select this abrasive and why, and kind of your offerings, I think that might be a good way to. We've gone through your new steel and why you would want to select that. We've gone through your GX1 and why you want to select that. The GX1 is a blend of the 3060 alluvial garnet and the 80 alluvial garnet combined. The reason you go for that is light coatings, a little more industrial use, and a higher profile.
Right, which was popular for it said on there that it was good for powder coating.
Yep, it is. Yeah. It is excellent for powder coating. If you want to go one step up from there, you go into your GX2. Your GX2 is a blended between a blend of 36 and 80. And the reason you want to go with GX2 is if you had a really heavy coating up to about 25 mils thick, and you wanted a higher profile. So if you're ever working on a job where you got a really tough coating that you want to get off up to, let's just say 25 mils thick, this is an excellent abrasive. It's going to help cut that quickly. It's going to get you between a 2.5 and 3.5 anchor profile. And that'll be for your coating removal type projects.
That's, it's funny because just before we got on, the phone call I took earlier today was a local guy who restores cars. In fact, he's working on a Bel Air right now. And, he wants to bring in these bumpers, but it's like, oh my gosh, he said it's just layer upon layer upon layer of paint and stuff. So I'm almost thinking like this GX2, because, I don't want, we don't want to overburden our system either. And so having a tougher blast that we can actually use on for these types of clients, not everything that comes into our shop needs something as extreme as a GX2, but it's nice to have it on hand just so that we can have the confidence to blast through several layers of paint without having to go through the whole dip process or chemical strip process first.
Yeah. I think, and this is all geographic, right? In Hawaii, I think the closest thing to GMA, because your product's probably coming from Australia, and Australia offers, this is an American-made product. The Australian is the alluvial premium blast, which would be your 3060, is probably the closest thing to GMA GX2 Tough Blast.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. I have to now go back into my invoice now because my curiosity is piqued to see what it is that we bought. But there was something on the this was a long time ago on the group pages in Facebook, and they were talking about ordering garnet from China. And I know, doesn't Australia sell to China, or does China have its own garnet?
That's a great point. I mentioned earlier that there's certain types of garnet, and there's only certain. You got river garnet, you got so there's several mine sources in the world. Yeah, there's mines throughout India, there's mines throughout China, Mexico, United States, Australia.
But what makes this more premium, I guess, or better?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's twofold. One is the source and what it's been through. So the difference, an alluvial garnet is great because it's gotten to its size by just its existence. So it's geologically older. Maybe it's been through abrasion, through wind, through travel across Earth, but it's been knocked down and brought to its hardest form. All the impurities and imperfections are knocked off of it, and it's down to its particle size strictly just by existing. And how does it get knocked down? Well, there's wind, there's abrasion, and there's water that will clean garnet, right? So, and then there's sources where it's a crushed rock. It's naturally a larger size, and it's crushed down into its size. And the disadvantage to having a crushed rock garnet is when you crush something, you create fissures in it, and it becomes more friable. Therefore, it could be more dusty. You're not going to get as many recycles out of it if you're trying to turn it and recycle it. So an alluvial garnet's the way to go, especially in a recycling environment. What makes GMA special is its source and how old it is, how long it's been around. And aside from that, the processing and the plants make GMA very special. They put the garnet through several cleaning processes and state-of-the-art plants that remove all the impurities out of the garnet. So you're getting actual garnet, and the garnet itself has a very high hardness because of the source. So it's a quality garnet. It's been through a wash plant and a processing plant that gets out all the impurities, and just you're paying for actual garnet. You're not getting the contamination.
Right. And I don't know what it is about powder coaters. We seem to be bombarded with direct sales from China. I don't know if it's just that maybe it's happening across all industries, but it just seems like they'll just come out and try to meet you on social media or for everything from like powder coating guns to, garnet and stuff. And I just want to educate powder coaters, like it's not that I don't want to work with China. It's just that maybe I have a hang up with China. I don't know. I just feel like I should be buying American made products, or at least products that are derived through American companies, and not necessarily just buying China for China's sake because it's cheap or it's this or that, because those people are not going to tell you what you just said, right? About how the purity of the garnet that they're getting. They're just trying to sell. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting too political about it.
No, it's a very, very good point. And there's standards around garnet as well. Here in the States, we have what's called a mil spec, and our abrasive meets that military spec. And the military has written a spec to ensure the abrasive you're using isn't leaving embedments, isn't leaving impurities. The quality, there's some quality controls around it. You have ISO standards, you have mil specs, you have QPLs. So we have gone above and beyond with our abrasive to ensure that when you're blasting with it, you're blasting with garnet and you don't have a bunch of impurities in it. Impurities are contamination. They stick in the surface and they cause premature coating failures. So garnet isn't garnet. One garnet isn't the same as the next. And it's critical because you're at different price points and you got to justify that, right? So you're looking at these other garnets, imported garnets, that who knows where they come from, who knows how well they're clean. You may be, half of your bag may be dust. Who wants to pay for dust? You want to pay for garnet. It may be they haven't gotten out the impurities, so you're paying for impurities. So
that's really important with powder coating, because as you know, you have to heat up the metal and it outgasses and stuff, and you're putting impurities you're embedding it by blasting it. You're adding to that outgassing, you're adding to that quality issue or quality control,
Absolutely.
And, I have to say something because, there's a lot of political stuff out there right now, and people seem to be challenging America for what it stands for and everything like that. But on a deeper level, I don't think the average American understands the importance of military grade standards or ASTM standards or OEM standards and what they mean. Even PCI has its powder coating standards. And these standards are there for a reason. For one, it's not just a guide, it's to make sure that this is what makes America great. I mean, it's because we have these standards in place. We actually had a group of men or women sit down and craft these standards so that the quality that we, it's not just that we're innovative or whatever in terms of like what America and what we're producing as manufacturing. It's because we have these standards in place that make, that make Garnet and this GX2 or GX1 so vitally important to getting the job done, not just getting it done, but getting it done right. And I don't think that China considers that because they're mainly just producing to give us whatever we need. Yeah, I'm still talking to Jeff. Okay, yeah, it's fine. So, that's just really good to be talking about this to kind of get that quote out or to get that point across. So let's move on to what were we moving on to next? We did this one.
Surface preparation guides.
This is going to be talking about the different grades of rust. So I'm going to pause it for just a second because I have a couple guys in my office right now. So let's just pause for a second, okay?
That's rose.
Hold on.
That's like a yellow. Yeah, they're all kind of
Whenever you can, the bid for oily at point.
Okay.
There's a
Will do.
little note in the corner
Thank you.
that just says powder coat finish, but color to be determined. TBD.
Okay, not AAMA or anything. Okay, I'll take a look. We'll take a look.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
Cindy called, but I haven't got back to her yet. So.
Yeah, I know. We're way behind.
Oh, good.
So
Good.
probably tomorrow we'll be bringing it over.
Okay.
Morocco copper.
I mean, the owner is totally cool.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess, has something to do with the bonding. So,
Okay. I've been busy. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So here we go. I'm sorry. I haven't. Okay. That's it. Okay. So we got, these are all the different single stage molds. So they're more traditional kind of gold brassy look. What you're looking at is a transparent, which is those. So the transparent is a little different. We have to do we do basically a chrome base coat, and then I do this is a clear coat. It's got a color to it, right?
That's spicier.
A little more because I have to use.
Right, exactly.
Or this is a single stage where it's just it's a solid color, but it doesn't give you that. It's more like a metallic, like so in the sunlight you see like sparkle and stuff like that.
Which one's the rose gold?
No, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That one's gonna be
Here's one.
yeah.
Yeah, it says rose gold. Here, you need my glasses.
I do.
We're both on like this.
There's rose gold, and then I think there's a rose gold too.
Okay, so this is candy gold. This is brassy gold. Now this is also a really nice gold, but these are both very yellow.
Yeah.
This
Almost
is
orangey.
transparent brass. This is anodized gold. So this is more of your traditional gold right here.
No, I like this one. This one's I can't think of almost like a yellow. This was that what that says? Yellow gold?
This is candy gold.
Candy gold.
Yeah, so this
Okay.
is very similar to the other one.
Yeah.
Okay, so you like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me go through here. So
Rose gold
I'm
is
looking
in
for.
there.
Is it in this
It
one?
might be on the is that the architectural? It's in that other one that I think it's the architectural one. Yeah, it's that. Probably that one. Here, give it to me. I'll find it faster.
This is because it's more on your website. I saw the wheel. I like the color of the wheel.
Which wheel?
The rose gold that we did, the motorcycle.
There's car wheel.
Don't know.
Yeah, right there.
That's trans copper.
Oh, okay. Is that one there?
That's trans copper, and that's a Columbia coating.
Yeah,
That's on the car.
That is,
Okay.
okay,
That's
that's
different than that bridge,
that, yeah, that's totally two different things.
Oh, okay.
Right, so, and just so you know, that was a brand new rim so if we're restoring, it won't look like that.
Okay.
It'll look more like a root beer color. This was brand new Bertini wheels that came out of the box, and it didn't last. The problem is you need a good surface prep, and we just went right over like polished aluminum.
Right,
so there's nothing for it to stick to.
That's copper translucent, and that's what we did that in.
Yeah.
That's really orangey compared to in there. That's
Yeah.
more goldy in there, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, it looks different.
Okay, so
It
let's try
trans-
this one. So let's write this one down then.
okay, sure. Yep.
Was it? And I'm gonna take off a bunch of parts and drop them off.
Candy
You're not hiring them.
No,
Live there,
this is
nothing. People live there, nothing. Okay, someone said you moved there, you live there.
yeah, I got tired of it.
Okay, that's cool.
I mean, I like mine. Don't get it wrong.
So this is a top coat over aluminum. So you know how it's the same thing with the Bertini with that
No,
trans copper.
I'm doing these motorcycle parts.
Oh, okay.
It's gonna be a bunch of mostly chrome plated steel, and then
Okay.
and then eventually do some couple of
But you're okay with it being yellow?
Yeah, I want the yellow set. What I'm looking for is like the Root Beer brought a really big gold plate in it. Jesse did for me.
Okay.
I was almost thinking, you know, the anodized aluminum, like the front forks of dirt bikes and stuff.
Yeah.
I think in that, because this bike I just bought a set outside for 3 years. It's pretty much all rusty.
Okay.
So you
So
agree with me?
the color
Same
varies with thickness.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. So we're
Oh,
gonna be
okay.
doing it. It'll probably be more on the yellowy
Okay.
gold side.
Okay, that's
It
what
might be
exactly what I'm
a
looking for.
darker, yeah, it might get darker, especially on smaller parts, right?
Yeah, they're gonna be all small parts. They're all little body parts. Like
So-
people say, yeah, you know the stuff I bring, all little body parts.
Yeah.
All the
Okay.
little chrome parts in the body.
No problem. That'll be a good
Yeah.
color.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, I'll drop it off next year, a bunch of it.
Sure.
All right.
That's okay, I'll put it back.
Oh,
I got
okay,
it.
just, yeah.
You want me to write it down for you?
Just so I remember,
Yes,
I'll bring it in with
candy
me.
gold, and I'll put prismatic powders. Sorry. my
I'll go
pen
ahead
is-
and order it.
Oh, thanks to get some.
How many? Well, I got the transparent.
Oh,
We
that's
have
not the same?
transparent gold, that's
It's a little
different.
different, but we'll get it.
Oh, it'll be here in a few days.
Yeah, I'll drop off next week when I come to this side. I come over like once a week. So, there's gonna be a box about this size. Maybe a couple of long skinny stuff too.
Okay, so pound.
Okay. Get yourself what you need. Okay. All right, cool. I'm glad I came to the right place. I just Googled it. And I was like, oh, let me go buy.
Did you love that shit?
Hey, Jeff, I'm back. Sorry about that. Probably should have muted my mic, but I
No worries. I muted mine.
didn't.
I just
Ah,
and I
okay.
muted my video. Hang on.
Okay, here we go. We're on this page. So we're going to get into the rust grades now. This is good. This is exciting. I like this. So I'm so yeah, okay. We were just talking about Garnet and reviewing some of the different blends that you guys have, where Garnet comes from, why you want to use or buy from US and Australia sources like the GMA and or what BlastOne also partners with GMA for. But now this fascinated me, and I thought it was such a great idea to bring it up today, Jeff, because we're going to talk about grades of rust. And, you know, nobody talks about this in powder coating, or at least I haven't found anything. I find it fascinating. I did not know that we had different levels or grades of rust. When you said it, it totally made sense to me that we should. So let's go over the different kinds of grade rust. And we have a visual here. So if you can listen on, go ahead. We'll put a link into the description here on the podcast for you to follow along with. It's a great visual that BlastOne has come up with to help you decipher what you're looking at and how bad it is. Because I think the bottom line, and I'm kind of going to let the punchline go a little bit sooner than we need to, but it's important to know these grades so that you can identify maybe and charge more for the kind of restoration jobs that come through your shop, because they are, the more severe the rust, the more difficult the project could be. And knowing the different grades can actually help you in your estimating. At least consider it when you're estimating it, so that you're not shorting yourself. So go ahead, Jeff. Let's get into this.
Sure. Those are all really good points, because, for instance, if you're looking at a part or blasting something that has a 1/4-inch coating on it, you're certainly not going to get that off and clean it as well and as easy as you would a piece of new steel or something with a 10 mil coating on it. So you got to take into consideration, what is the surface and what is it going to take to clean it? How long is it going to take? How much abrasive it's going to take? So you're going to estimate how many pounds of abrasive you're going to use and how long it's going to take you. Therefore, you can estimate your labor and cost and your abrasive. So when doing that, if it's, you have different grades of rust as well. So if you're looking at steel as a new steel project, that you're going to take some steel that may have been sitting around the yard, maybe it's fresh off the press, or maybe it's been in service in a sea environment or a really corrosive environment, you're going to have different grades of rust. And SSPC has what's called visual guides, and BlastOne actually has visual guides. We're happy to supply those. But what this guide does is it explains and gives you a visual comparator, so you can determine if you're working with a rust grade A, a rust grade B, C, or D. And you can also follow along and get lots of information off of these viz guides on what class of blast and what grade rust it is. And we can go through that now about the differences of each grade of rust. So rust grade A is steel with the mill scale layer intact and very minor or no rusting. So it looks like most of the steel you'll see in a new condition is rust grade A. Very good looking piece of steel, very minor or no rusting at all. You get into your rust grade B, that's steel with spreading surface rust and the mill scale commencing and flaking. If you look at the picture, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. This rust grade is something that you would see that you would say, hey, this is pretty rusty. And your mill scale is beginning to build up on it. Rust grade C is completely rusty steel with the mill scale layer flaked and loose or lost, but only minor occurrence of pitting. And pitting is exactly that. It's when the steel begins to pit. And rust grade D is steel with spreading surface rust and the mill scale commence flaking, considerable pitting.
Yeah, see that.
Yep. You're not going to bid a project, a rust grade A. So when you look at these comparators are essential to say, oh man, this is the kind of rust I'm looking at. I know this is probably a no-brainer for a lot, but some maybe haven't never looked at it or taken this into consideration. And it's a very good resource, a comparator, so you can help bid your jobs. You're not going to bid something that's a rust grade D the same you would to clean as you would a rust grade A.
Yeah, and I was just thinking as you were, it's almost like, can't you do like a fingernail test or like a scraper test, or take like a razor blade and, because obviously like a grade A isn't really going to show any kind of corrosion or deterioration. But then you start getting into B and C, you're going to start to see a little bit more material coming up if you scratch it either on your fingernail or yeah. I mean, it's more than just looking for pitting. It's also like how much material are you seeing when you're taking that blade
and the color.
Okay, yeah,
the color. So yeah, you can. That's what the comparator will help you determine too. And there's different grades. I mean, you can have pack rust on a piece of steel too. That's a rust grade B, but just packed. So it'll jump into a rust grade D. But these visual comparators and just knowing and knowing what you're looking at is a great guide. Right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. It'd be nice if you just had this guide either on a sheet that you could mail out or something. Like, this is just such a nice visual guide. It should be,
we have it on our website. I think you supplied the link. That's
right.
a free resource. These guides, you can't see it, but I'm looking at a Viz guide in front of me. It's one of our SSPC. They're like $200 or $300. If you contact BlastOne, we can get one out to you, and we can probably get them out to you for no charge.
Yeah, a lot of people work with their hands so that, obviously you're around restoration all the time. I mean, I would imagine most people are pretty familiar. I mean, visually, I see what you're talking about and stuff. But a lot of times people, are sitting behind a desk. They're not necessarily in the job shop, and they need to have like some kind of a guide to go through just to.
Is there a pen in here? No, I need a. Oh, there it is.
Okay. So I think this is a great way to. Is there anything else that we need to talk about? I mean.
Well, we could just quickly after, and because it's on these comparator guides, is you also, when you look at it, when you're looking at the rust, you got your rust grade A, B, C, and D, and then you got your class of blast, and then you got your profile and surface. So we could talk briefly about class of blast.
Yeah, let's do that. And that's what you mean by NACE.
Yeah, so you got like you got your class and your cleanliness of blast, which is determined by the specification, which for instance, an SSSP7 is a very light whip, clean blast, removal of loose surface contaminants. Then you got your SSPC SP6, which is a substantial blast clean with widespread visible contamination, removal, and base metal color. Then most commonly in powder coating, you're probably going to be looking at a SSPC SP10, which is it's what we consider a near white finish. When you clean the steel, the steel is going to be nearly white. You'll have some minor contamination or discoloring, but it's less than 30% over each square foot. So that would be an SP10. That's a very common surface cleanliness that most people are very comfortable going over. If you want to go one step further, you'll get to an SSPC SP5, which is a complete blast clean. They call it a white finish. It's all white, no visible contamination or coloration. And these Viz guides are used to compare the surface, and you can see that class of blast.
It might be good for powder coaters to take pictures of their blasted metal. I mean, when we have like a job come through that is got like a grade D, the customer needs to know, or even a grade C, that we won't know how severe it is, the pitting is, until after it's blasted.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this before and then after. And what happens the after is, what can we give to the customer without charging like crazy dollars for surface build through primers and stuff like that, So, we always kind of warn the customer, especially if they pick a smooth powder, that when they bring us something that's like, something that's going to be severely pitted after, and you put a smooth powder on there, you're still going to see that surface degradation underneath. That's not going away. And even if we build it up with primers, it could still, if it's deep enough, it could still pretty much be there.
Sure.
And as long as we disclose that to them ahead of time, that always seems to kind of like put the customer not necessarily at ease, but at least on notice that, there's only so much that we can promise. You brought this in in this condition when you should have brought it to us at a much earlier time, and now you want us to make it brand new and perfect again. It's not going to happen that way, right?
Set your realistic expectation.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's great. Now, what does the word NACE mean? Is this an acronym, or where does that word come from?
So there's two societies or committees that make up the corrosion world and set, like ASTM is to testing. You got SSPC, which is a recognized committee, and NACE, which is when it comes to inspection and writing surface specifications for coatings. In the coatings world, and it's funny that you mentioned that. I guess this is a good point. NACE and SSPC have been kind of competitors in a way of who is let's just say the gospel when it comes to coatings. Who is the fact? This is how it needs to be done. Well, recently they've decided to merge. NACE is more of a global, international standard, recognized more widespread, and SSPC is a society that was more in the States. So now they've merged, and it's all going to be one standard. What that looks like, I don't know what it's going to be called, but NACE has their standards, and SSPC has their standards, and we've highlight, like you got your NACE 4, your NACE 3, your NACE 2, and NACE number 1. Those are the same as your SSPC 6, 7, 10, and
it's similar to the AAMA is now kind of merging with the FGIA, finishing something, I don't know, FGIA, fenestration and glazers, something or other. So, and it primarily has to, that the GIA has been like more for windows and door treatments and stuff like that, and everything, setting the standards there. But now they're kind of merging together. So I can see that I can see where this is kind of getting into more of a global spec type world than, which is good. It makes it easier to communicate, especially when you realize that we're all just kind of, China's trying to sell to us, we're trying to sell to Europe doesn't want us, whatever, the world goes around.
It makes it easier. It gets tricky in the coatings world, but it'll be a little bit easier because you have one spec. You'll go by this writing, this spec, but they're both very well known and well respected councils. And set, basically write the book on what the coating should be prepared to and why, and give coating companies a clear written procedure, standard operating procedure to say, hey, you need to do this for this to work and get this outcome. So,
Well, this has been great. Again, I hadn't even considered the rest thing. And this just ties right in with everything else we were talking about earlier in episode 14, as well as continuing on the conversation with today's episode. So once again, Jeff, I thank you for coming aboard.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Okay. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Kim.
See ya.
We'll see ya.